wearing a burqa. Thank you very much.
Tell you, I just came back from the Middle East, and it was refreshing with all that's going on. It was refreshing not to be constantly bombarded with smut all the time.
All right, Christine, we're going to have to leave it there.
Everybody keeps saying that what's happening in the Republican Party this year is the emergence of a whole new crop of conservatives. It is not a whole new crop of conservatives. These folks have been around conservative politics for a long time. This is just the first year that so many of them have tried to make the miasma of very, very, very far-right conservative movement politics into a cogent Republican Party platform for the midterm elections. Joining us now is Frank Schaeffer. He's the author of the book Crazy for God, How I Grew Up as One of the Elect, helped found the religious right, and lived to take all or almost all of it back. Mr. Schaeffer, thank you so much for coming back on the show tonight. It's nice to see you.
Hey, thanks, Rachel. Good to be back.
So everybody's been saying all year that the religious right is really disenfranchised in Republican politics right now. Fiscal conservatives have taken over the party. It seems to me like the religious right is really back. Do you think that it is?
Look, it's like claims for cures for cancer. You know, there's always something coming along saying that, you know, now there's a cure, but it always comes back that it's not quite the cure. The religious right is a fundraising operation. It's not a political operation at all. People like Gary Bauer, who I knew back in the day when I was in the religious right, and my dad was a leader and I was a leader, before I dropped out in the early 80s, was in the same business he's in tonight. And so when he comes in there bashing Muslims, but say wasn't bashing them before 9/11, or when people show up and say it's refreshing to be in the Middle East before 9/11 and then come back and change their minds, you have to understand they don't have a real ideology. These are fundraising opportunists, not political opportunists. And of course, the Republican Party is now saddled with a leadership that are so cowardly, people like Mitt Romney and McCain and the others, that they don't stand up against these guys and say, look, you know, we need you like we need a hole in the head. What you're all about is raising money for things like your family organizations and all the rest. You keep changing your tune. It's gays, it's blacks, it's Muslims, circle the wagons, real Americans stand up, the Sarah Palin shtick. And Sarah Palin's the greatest example. She serves half a term as governor and drops out to make a buck. These are flakes. And I used to be one of them. And thank God I got out, and I mean that literally because I'm still a believing Christian. I'm not that kind of Christian, but I'm a Christian. And you have to understand, these people are about fundraising for their organizations, and they will latch onto anything. And if that means they're sometimes sounding like they're fomenting a little violence, they'll do it. If it comes off as racist or xenophobic or anti-Muslim. And let me just say this. I had a son who's in the Marine Corps. And I'm loyal to the Marines and the men and women in the Marine Corps and our other armed services. And it makes me sick to see a group that wraps itself in the flag, stoking the flames of anti-Islamic phobia in exactly the way that will result in people like those young Marines who served with my son getting killed while these cowards raise money based on stoking these flames. That's who Newt Gingrich is. That's who these people are today. And it's disgusting.
Frank, I feel like the Beltway media take on what's going on in the Republican Party and the conservative movement right now hasn't really yet caught up to the fact that there's a lot of people from the religious right who have been longtime conservative movement figures who are really rising to power here. I mean, somebody like Christine O'Donnell has been running for office for a long time. Somebody like Sharon Angle has been active in movement politics in the Southwest for a very long time. These folks are not new. What do you think that people who are used to covering just red versus blue, Republican versus Democrat, should understand about the influence of this religious right conservative movement, as you say, fundraising operation in the Republican Party? What should people be on the alert for?
Well, they have to dig a little deeper the way you do on your show. And the fact of the matter is the media doesn't do this. They always say on the one hand this, on the other hand that, and they take these people at face value. The first thing you have to do is strip away this idea that these are serious people. They're not. The religious right is a fundraising operation for various organizations, whether that's focused on the family or any of these other groups. People like Gary Bauer, if he's not running for president and trying to raise money that way, the same way Pat Robertson did, which was never a serious run. It was just about Pat's building his empire and so forth. We'll cycle back always into the mixture until they just grow old and die in it. And we have these new people coming along like Christine O'Donnell, new to the nation, but have just used old baggage when it comes to this group. It's always the same people. The real story here is this. The Republican Party has to be held to account. These are your people, my fellow Republican, former fellow Republicans. If you don't speak up against them, then they become your problem. And the problem is the lines are fuzzy. And so you have all these Republican candidates who actually pick up part of this fundraising pitch from people like Gary Bauer, fold it into their own machinery, use it. They know perfectly well that these guys are flakes. They know perfectly well that they're not serious. They also know perfectly well that there are a lot of people out there, particularly in white, middle-class and lower-middle-class America, who are disgruntled enough to be moved by messages of hatred and xenophobia, and they're cashing in on it. It's the same old playbook again and again and again and again and again. But now it's taken a dangerous twist with all this anti-Islamic rhetoric, because our men and women will get killed because of the kind of things being said by these people, and there's absolutely no need for stirring up a wartime situation to take advantage of it for short-term domestic gain. And so the Republicans deserve what they're going to get in November, which is far less result than they're hoping for. And I would just urge people, you know, you're saying what to do about this, how to stay alert. Well, one thing we can stay alert for is that whether we agree with everything the Obama administration is doing or not, or whatever it may be, we have to root for Democrats and reasonable people in this next election to stop these flakes from suddenly becoming our national leadership.
Frank Schaeffer, author of the book Crazy for God. Frank, thank you very much.